Hello there, everyone. My name is Vishnu Pandey, Subject Specialist at the National Center for Educational Resource Development. I should say former Subject Specialist at the National Center for Educational Resource Development, NSER. And today I'll be talking about the general purpose of the renewed curriculum that we have recently constructed and is now being used to drive the teaching and learning process across our school system. It is a great pleasure to have been invited to speak on the purpose of the subject, actually, but I should offer you a bit of a background as to how the renewed curriculum has really come into place. And you should know that we often use the word re-engineered curriculum, and it sets apart us from the old curriculum, or that which was being used to drive the learning over the years for a very long period of time. You need to understand that the renewed curriculum has been constructed with a lot of effort and people and places and things over a long period of time. And to come this way with a renewed curriculum is a tremendous effort, and all that has worked on that curriculum should be applauded. We say re-engineered version of the curriculum because we have really reconstructed the curriculum to meet the demands of the teaching and learning process of today. What do I mean by that? You have often referred to the old curriculum as that which requires teaching and learning to be led in a process where you have textbook examples, teaching by chalk and talk method on the chalkboard kind of thing. And now we have transformed that or launched that into the new era of thinking and learning in the teaching and learning of mathematics by actually contribute tremendous structure in terms of strategy, what we call the inclusive learning strategies, and we balance that with inclusive assessment strategies. These are two fundamental principles about the renewed curriculum that you need to know. And so perhaps for you to understand the renewed curriculum, we first need to pay adherence or pay respect to actually the purpose of mathematics in this everyday existence. And you should understand, and you will know by now, that mathematics is so important. Everyone talks about maths. You know you need to get maths before you go to the university. You can have 14, 15, 20 subjects. You don't have maths. You got to do it back. Why do we say that? Mathematics is a subject that requires you to think, simply put like that way. It's a subject that relates itself to the other subject areas. Mathematics is important in carrying through a child's journey from nursery right up to tertiary. Because why? Because mathematics helps you to think critically, to be problem solvers, to better understand the world around in which a child exists, and everyone exists. And so mathematics has a purpose. Its importance is rooted and grounded in that sort of way. The renewed curriculum, when it was engineered, used that thinking behind every bit of process that carried through that construct of the curriculum. And so I bring to you the process by which teaching and learning is carried in mathematics. And there are a set of standards that we pay adherence to. There are 5 of them. I may not be able to rattle out all 5 to you, but I'll tell you the most important ones. Problem solving. That's the first most important process standards that drives the teaching and learning across our system. What does that mean? It means through problem solving, a child connects his thinking to the real world in which he lives. A child connects mathematical thinking to the other subject areas and help to improve as they go along. And so problem solving provides an opportunity for them to, we say, think critically by the problems offered to them. We say think critically too by connecting their thinking to the real world. communicating their ideas coherently as they go along, and then representing their thinking when tasks and assignments are given. Now, by doing that, or by explaining that tree, I already call 3 process standards: problem solving, communication, representation. I'd just like to revisit communication a bit. In our renewed curriculum, in the re-engineered version of the curriculum, we have spent quite a lot of time in constructing opportunities or constructing ideas to offer opportunities for the children to communicate their ideas coherently in a unique way to the peers and to the class as a whole. And that is a very important process standard. And then the ability for them to represent their thinking diagrammatically or verbally as well, or by written way in some measure or the other. But it is important that they represent their thinking, represent their ideas. And so problem solving, communication, representation, and then we have applications and connections. That's the 4th one. That's very important. To be able to connect their ideas to the real world in a way that is meaningful for the child. That is what application and connection really consist in. Connecting the mathematical concept to the other subject areas and connecting the concept to the real world in which a child lives. And then lastly, we have the reasoning and proof, to be able to reason out on their own, argue, take a position inductively, perhaps say why this is so. I can argue and show mathematically how it is so. And so we already have the 5 process standards. And so the renewed curriculum, its basis is actually governed by those standards. And so one of the theoretical underpinning, in fact, the theoretical underpinning of the entire curriculum is that what we call constructivism. Now, constructivism is a theory in education. What it speaks about really is how do we construct learning experiences, and the child doing that, by the way, in a way that means a lot to them. So when we teach children the concepts, the key ideas, the topics, the strands, throughout the entire academic year, we want to make sure that the child constructs his or her own knowledge. And that is what constructivism is about, from that experience. And so we come to an important part of the curriculum called Big Idea. Big Idea is central. It's probably a heading in the curriculum. What really it means? It means that organizing, teacher organizing experiences, obviously, but that organizing, speaking and addressing the need for teachers to bring the new knowledge to what the child already knows. The child is coming to classrooms with no empty slate. We all talk about that. They have ideas, they're exposed to an immensity of information on the television, in the environment. They make representation of their own learning in many different ways. And our ability to bring the new knowledge to them in a way that they resonates well with what they already know is the brilliance of what we call Big Idea. And that is central in the new curriculum. So permit me now to give you a bit of a structure of how the renewed curriculum, what it looks like. We have 5 strands. We have number and number theory, number and operations. We bring them together as number and operations. Patterns and sequence, measurement, geometry, and data handling. Those are the 5 main strands in the mathematics curriculum. And what we did was by grade level, we construct essential learning outcomes. That is ELO. We refer to it as the ELO, but that's essential learning outcomes. What it does, it is constructed in a way that defines what the child needs to know at that particular grade in the particular strand. What is the strand doing? The strand is doing this. So for instance, in measurement, for learners, let's say perhaps a grade 2, for learners to be able to understand the measurable attributes of objects and to be able to measure in the real world and connect measurement to geometry. I'm just saying hypothetically, but that's most of the words are locked in the essential learning outcomes. So that sets the pace by which the grade level expectation will be rolled out. GLO, or grade level expectation, is constructed out of or derived out of the essential learning outcomes. What that really does, it speaks to the specific area about the essential learning outcome that is pertinent to the grade the child is in. And then we move down into the specific curriculum outcome. Now that specific curriculum outcome sets the tone in which we roll out inclusive learning strategies and inclusive assessment strategies and inclusive learning resources for the entire curriculum, for the learning to happen. Now, what do I mean by specific curriculum outcome? Specific curriculum outcome is behavioral. It elicits behavior, and through a patterning, teacher and the students come to grasp with the concept. It's written in the language like the old curriculum that you say it has criteria, it has condition, it is behavioral. By the end of this particular task or unit, the learner shall be able or should be able to do this, that, and the other. It's a doing thing. And so with this renewed curriculum, our emphasis on the specific curriculum outcome consists in the capacity of the child being able to do things over a period of time in a sequential way so that the learning is acquired through that habit of doing. So there's a lot of skills set in that. And then we set the tone for let us say, I'm talking about measurement, so I should be just sticking with it. At a lower level, one of the main things in the learning is to bring an experience in measurement for the child, for them to understand by concept what measurement is about. So we say to be able to understand the measurable attributes of an object in a non-standard way. What does that mean? It means that the child should be able to experience ways and means of taking objects and measuring other objects and say, you know what? Well, I'm using my spectacle, but if the child has an object about this, 10 centimeters in length, the child can take that object and say, all right, my arm here from there to there is 1, 2, 3 spectacle lengths. So the child has a concept of measurement in a non-standard way. And so the opportunities are there in the curriculum for teachers to explore. We suggest that in the inclusive learning strategies. We suggest it in a way that the teachers can stimulate and get ideas. Because in a Guyana context, we are unique geographically. The learners on the coastland and the students on the coastland may not have the same experience to those learners in the deep south of Guyana or the hinterland, we say. A child in Marura now, deep south Rupununi, is going to have the different physical experience, a learning experience. Well, I don't say a learning experience, but those physical objects and so around them there, it's going to be different to the ones in the coastland. We have the television, we have Giftland, we have places to go, we see things, we see an escalator up and down. They don't have that service. So what we do, we bring the inclusive learning strategies in a way that whatever is explained there, a teacher in Marura now can perform the task in the curriculum in a way that is engaging for the child, as opposed to a teacher in Georgetown who can bring the same learning experience, but with perhaps different objects and manipulative that the child relates to in his real world here. So real world experiences are used primarily in the context of teaching. That's big on this renewed curriculum slate. The inclusive learning strategies is very important. They're one of the main features of this curriculum. Now we ask, and there are many other ways in presenting the inclusive. I want to use measurement. We have geometry, we have number, we have so many other things. The beauty about this inclusive learning strategy is that when the teacher uses the curriculum document, they are stimulated to think in a way that is inclusive too, that relates to their own learning spaces. And they can create things similar to what is presented there. It ought not to be a biblical sort of law book, quote unquote, to go through and say, thou shalt have to do this and this alone. What it does, it stimulates the teacher to think creatively, to employ things, but in congruence with what is stated there or similar, you know? Now the big question is, how do the teachers, or how do we know that the children are learning? How do we assess their learning? You know, the old curriculum, and I must refer to it because I'm talking renewed curriculum, but I say old, in inverted commas for God's sake, old curriculum, spent a lot of time and used a lot of emphasis on summative assessments. What I mean by summative is that there was a lot of paper and pen tests to find out how the children are coping with the learning. And what happens, teachers graduate from midterm tests to end of term tests to end of year tests to the national examination. These are all summative examination. And for far too long, that has not done what it ought to do for us to know the children are learning. For instance, let me take you right into the middle of it, into the first one, assessing the midterm examination with a quiz of 10 points. If a child gets 9 out of 10, our teacher sits back and says, oh, the child has done well, the child has learned. I should go on to the next topic, perhaps. Or if a child gets 2 out of 10, no, you got to do better, you got to call your parents, come on, you got to... What does that do to help the teacher to understand if the child is coping with the learning, or if the child has learned or not, or perhaps has grasped the concept or not? And so that has not worked. What is working now is that we have presented assessment, inclusive learning assessments, in a way that is formal. Formative meaning that a teacher can observe as a child perform a task and make copious notes as the child progresses. And that by making the notes to see how the child is coping with the learning, if they're getting it or not, or if they're close to getting it, that is more meaningful to the teacher in employing strategies, for instance, to make the child understand at the end of it, or to get to foster understanding, or the depth of understanding. And so it is important that we understand what we mean by formative assessment. They come in many ways. This renewed curriculum has offered that. We have the exit ticket. So a teacher can give a child a question on a one-to-one basis to find out how they have learned or coped with the learning of the day. Just one question to two as the child exits the class. And that, by the way, the teacher knows. And the teacher makes notes to say, okay, Jilly, Gabriella, and Susamita is going to be my first target the next morning, because you know why? I'm going to engage them. I notice they have not really grasped it as yet. The teacher has the opportunity to think about the children learning too. That's the beauty of the curriculum. And so that is one of the strategies. We also have 4 corners. And this is a beautiful one. This is perhaps a whole class way of engaging, but for the teacher to find out if the children are coping with the learning or they have grasped the concept. A teacher perhaps can put a question on the board. The teacher says, the length of the square, the rectangle, can also be the width. Why? That's it, you know. Perhaps draw a rectangle and just say the length can also be the width. Why? Now that provokes thinking. That provokes the children to think about why. Why is Miss asking me? And so they go into 4 corners, some group here, some group there, some children here in groups perhaps, and they all talk about the learning and share ideas. And by doing that, the teacher has an idea of how they're thinking and how they're grasping around that central concept of area. where length and width are used, or perhaps perimeter. Because I tell you what, this is a rectangular phone. We always have been accustomed over centuries, I'm going perpetually in that the longer side is the length. Now, if the longer side is the length, watch this. The longer side is the length, or longest, we say, the length. And the width is the shortest side. I ask, how do we explain width? Can you remember when you're on the phone? Well, this is a humorous one. Or you're talking to somebody and you say it's wide, wide. And we always do this of saying wide. That's a conceptual framework embedded in us for a very long time. We say wide by this. It is a horizontal spread. Now, if it is a horizontal spread, and I'm coming to you with this, as this side being the longer side, saying length, but I want to fit this phone in some way, I'm going to be talking about width. I'm going to be talking with the horizontal spread, or the horizontal space, or the width of the space I'm going in, and therefore I'm talking about length. So length becomes width. If I turn it this way, the length becomes the height. This side becomes the width. This side is the width. This is how it's spread. This side is the width also too. So we ask, and the children are talking about this, and we ask, what is length? And so for me, I like to share what I did. Out of curiosity, we all like to Google. We are all Googlers, Google. And what I did on my own, I went to the dictionary. I found out what is length. The dictionary on the Google. And you know what it said? And I challenge you to go and find it. And when you find it, you'll smile. It says, length is whatever isn't width. Now, how do you like that? And so that's a fundamental concept. Just an example to show you what this real curriculum is about. To be able to provide the opportunities for assessment to balance with learning. So we have conceptual understanding and procedural fluency. Conceptual understanding, procedural fluency. They have to balance. When that balances, like a curriculum is offering the opportunity for it to balance, then we know learning is taking place. All right? I would like to also talk about our inclusive resources, because that's big on the menu here too. Inclusive learning resources are the ones that we have carefully chosen and selected and offered to the teacher that helps to create the climate for the learning to happen. I'm talking about manipulatives, for instance. Well, the dictionary has no plural, so I should stick to manipulative, but it means a collection of objects. And so we offer that in the curriculum. I'm talking about measurement earlier. So perhaps we're talking about area and we're talking about perimeter. Then we could talk about inclusive learning resources, about objects that the children can fit together to measure length, for instance. And these are there is an opportunity for hands-on engagement, and that's big on the plate. So the learning resources provide the opportunity for the children to be engaged in hands-on activities quite a lot, so that the development of conceptual understanding can happen. When that happens, teacher can deal with the procedural fluencies and so on to enact them with their algorithmic thinking about making algorithms. That's big on the mathematics plate. So I say to you, the renewed curriculum in this entire lengthy overview that I'm giving is so rich with ideas about and strategies and assessment and supported with resources that when it starts to work in the school system, as it is already starting to work now, you will see tangible change in the performance of students and children in mathematics. Because I tell you what, mathematics helps you to think critically, to develop habits of intuitively looking for patterns, making connections, making arguments, connecting ideas in the real world, for a powerful understanding of mathematics as a powerful and most important tool in the world. Thank you.